So from Meltwater, we have Laura Domescu and Michael Conti. So please join me in welcoming them to the stage.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the intro. My name's Laura Domescu. I oversee the customer success team for Meltwater in New York. And Michael Conti over here oversees our customer acquisition team. So today, really, we're going to share a little bit about the Meltwater story with all of you guys and talk about some of the changes that we see occurring in the industry. A lot of you, some of you might already know us as the global leader in media intelligence and analysis. However, we're a little bit more than that, and that's what I'm going to touch upon today. Really, over the last year, Meltwater has been going through a big repositioning effort. We've been making a lot of investments in new technology, and that really has to do with some of the changes that I mentioned that we see occurring in the industry. So for the purpose of just jumping straight into it, we want to share 3 propositions with you today. Obviously, all of us in the room already understand how much of a strategic role PR plays in organizations, but we think that with all these changes laying ahead of us, we're just barely scratching the surface. So with that said, these are our 3 propositions. 1, we think that decision-making needs to adjust to a new reality. We think new software categories will emerge as a result of this. But we also think that the way organizations are led and governed will change. Obviously, pretty bold propositions. We understand that. But we have seen this industry shape up for a pretty long time now. We were started in Oslo, Norway about 18 years ago, and back then I think we were tracking about 30 Norwegian newspapers, and our only assets were a couple of computers and a coffee machine. But today we do work with about 26,000 corporate clients globally. We work with about 80% of the Fortune 500 companies, and like I mentioned, we are the global leader in media intelligence software. So we do have a lot of insight and a lot of feedback to base these propositions on. So what are these changes that we keep seeing? Really, we think most of these are happening around a company's firewall. Right? Over the last 30 years, I'm sure we're all familiar with companies like Salesforce and IBM who've been developing software to help companies crunch internal data to really understand their performance. So what you're really seeing is on the left-hand side, those are the lagging performance indicators. We refer to them as such because they really feature on past performance. While obviously this will continue to be important, we think it's going to be disrupted by the explosion of external data, things happening outside of a company's firewall. And these are the leading performance indicators, or the ones that are focusing on the future and have predictive qualities. So to put it in very simple terms, we're all familiar probably with Eric Schmidt, the executive chairman of Alphabet. He mentioned recently that every 2 days we produce as much information as we did up until 2003, since the beginning of civilization. And if you think about how we conduct ourselves in our daily lives, we all leave behind these digital trails, right? Every time we post on Facebook or we create a new blog post, we leave behind these digital breadcrumbs that are publicly available, that everybody can access and interpret in different ways. And same goes for companies, right? So both individuals and companies leave behind these digital breadcrumbs. However, what we notice is that even with all that information accessible, the way we make decisions in the PR department or the company level hasn't really caught up fully with this digital reality. And actually, external data is probably the biggest blind spot when it comes to decision making. So even if it has to do with things like a competitor's job postings or their patent filings or their social media presence, there's a wealth of data out there that we can use to predict different market moves or our competitor moves. And if you want to take just an example, search engine marketing and SEM spending, let's say, we'll take it in the auto industry. If you look at some of the numbers, let's say you notice a company like Tesla spends 0 money on SEM, whereas BMW outspends all of their competitors probably in all of the markets. So if you take that piece of information and couple it with things like Google AdWords or their social media presence or their demographic data, you'll be able to make these predictions with a little bit more accuracy than before. And that's what we want to argue for at Meltwater. We want to argue for the fact there should be a shift in the way we make decisions. We should focus a lot more on what the industry and our competitors are doing and a little bit less so on what we are doing. And really, it's a paradigm that we call outside insight. It's something that focuses a little less on the past and a little bit more so on the future. And it's something really, it's one of the emerging software categories. It's something that we think will be to external data what business intelligence is to internal data. So with that said, I'll leave it up to Michael to show you some of these analytics in real time.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so Laura just obviously spoke a lot about our company vision and where our CEO sees the industry going. I suppose now it's part of my job to show you what some of that actually looks like as it pertains to something that is near and dear to your heart, which is media coverage. And over the past year or so, we have invested significantly into creating a new platform and acquiring multiple companies with really two primary objectives. The first is to have the most comprehensive pool of data in the world. And the second is simplicity, which is obviously very important for the user experience. But now we're using machine learning to actually automate the processes for our clients as it pertains to creating a report for your team or leadership or understanding the impact that your coverage actually has. Such as integrating something like Google Analytics into the platform. So what is your PR attribution? How are your campaigns actually driving traffic back to your website? And this is a shift that we'll continue to see more of, is actual tangible ROI metrics that can be converted to sales or direct revenue streams. And basically, I'll show you how to run a quick live search on the topic of the day, something we can all relate to, cupcakes. So basically, this is your search engine. If you wanted to come in and type in something like Baked by Melissa, for example, you can determine if you want to look through traditional editorial news, social media, broadcast news right from here. And then basically you will return those results. Now, although it's very important to obviously have such a large pool of data, I think it's equally as important to find the content that is most impactful, to find the good stuff, so to speak. And we're basically helping our clients to filter out a lot of that noise and that content by sorting by the prominence of the article and the publication. So we'll look at metrics like online reach, for example. So we see Cron.com, Pop Sugar, Yahoo News at the top. All of these sources will have a reach into the millions of people online, but that still doesn't tell you the whole picture. In 2017, I think we need to look at other ways to actually measure the prominence of the content, such as, is this being shared on social, on their mobile devices? Are they retweeting it, posting to Facebook, etc.? So if we look at this article in Yahoo News, for example, it has a reach of 2 million, but not that many people cared about it on social. However, if we go to this example in Pop Sugar, we see that it has hundreds of shares on social media. So this is a wave that I want to ride. So what we would allow you to do is retweet it, post to your social channels right from here, and then create what's called an impact report on this article specifically. So in the past, reporting is looked at, let's say, on a quarter or a month's worth of time, but now we can do it on an article by article basis in real time, which is obviously very important in today's landscape. So where is this being repurposed in editorial? What is the total reach and social shares? You'll notice it's interesting, and this happens a lot today, is the article was birthed in editorial news. And then on October 9th, it actually, it pretty much dies in editorial, but that's where the social buzz actually starts to happen. And once that snowball starts rolling, it continues to grow through today. What are the social shares? And again, Google Analytics integration, how would this article actually drive traffic back to a given website? So again, automating these processes for our clients is a big focus. And not only are we monitoring the content, but I believe Paul and Terry spoke a lot about this today. Influencer recognition is something that's very important. And when you rely on static data, There are some flaws or fundamental flaws in that because it's very difficult to classify our beloved reporters in today's landscape. So you really need to do your homework and research on them to understand how to properly pitch them. So what we can do is actually connect you with influencers live as they're having conversations in the news. So for example, here, Baked by Melissa, these are people that are speaking about her now in real time. Or we can apply this to the new cookbook that she came out with. We want to type in something like cake and cookbook and find the relevant influencers that are talking about that. And we can apply this to traditional news. We can apply this to social media as well so that you're covered in all areas. And lastly, I'll show you something that is super exciting that we just came out with. It's actually called a PR Insight Report. We know that in the past, if you're going to create a report that you can be proud of for your leadership, it can sometimes take hours, weeks, or what feels like years to build a report. But we have trimmed that process down to really just 5 minutes. So if you go to PR Insight Report in the system, it's basically a 5-click report. You select your date ranges, your brand, your color schemes, any searches or competitors that you want to benchmark against. And then most importantly, sorry, the formatting is a little funky on the screen, but the slides that you would actually want included in the report, such as key message penetration, net tonality, web impact, etc. And then if you click on Create Report, in just a matter of seconds, you'll have a finished report with all sorts of insights on the coverage. You can see that Melissa, I think she's gone, but she's getting a free report right now if she was here. She's most associated with key terms such as delicious and best. Those are good things to be mentioned alongside of. No surprise, excellent sentiment. It's cupcakes. Who doesn't love that? Competitive analyses, etc. So lastly, I will finish with a short video for you. A client case study that we have is the Muhammad Ali Center. They're a nonprofit museum client of ours. They focus a lot on educational programming, and they use Meltwater in some cool ways. So we'll take a look. If the Wi-Fi wants to cooperate, if not, that's okay.
Here we go.
Muhammad Ali stood for so many things to so many different people. Civil rights, social justice.
My family used Muhammad Ali as an example for standing up for what you believe in, but more importantly, accepting the consequences for that stand that you take. The purpose of the Ali Center really is to promote and share the legacy of Muhammad Ali.
We focus on who he was as both a boxer and outside the ring as a humanitarian, as a person.
As with any nonprofit, resources are very difficult to come by, so we have to optimize every resource that we have. Meltwater is very important to us. It helps us from a PR perspective. It helps us tell our story better.
Because we are a nonprofit, our budget has to be approved by the board, and if they don't see the value in what we're doing, it could be cut. So Meltwater allows us to present to them the return on investment from our press outreach. Meltwater gives us those hard numbers that we're able to take to our board and say, look at the value that's coming from what we are doing.
We use Meltwater to raise awareness. When you raise awareness, it creates a ripple effect. More money coming in, more partners interested in programming or collaborating together. To me, having Meltwater is more valuable than the money I have in paid advertising.
When Muhammad passed away, we opened our doors and we had about 25,000 people just because they wanted to be here in the city and to be with Muhammad. Meltwater allows us to do a keyword search. So I searched for anyone who had written an article referring to his humanitarian work. We were able to find the journalists who care about sharing Muhammad's legacy beyond his boxing career.
Our mission focuses on Muhammad's legacy and continuing to inspire other people to do great things. And by having the data that shows we've touched millions of people, that really is a good message that we're able to take to our donors, to our sponsors and supporters, and to our community.
Okay, thank you so much. Our table's right back there. We know we have some clients out here, so feel free to come say hello. We'd love to get to meet you and anyone that wants to learn more about Meltwater.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura and Michael, so much. Like they said, you can visit them right back there and ask as many questions as you'd like. Find out a bit more about the Meltwater platform. So up next, we're going to have Greg Gallant from Muck Rack talk a little bit about their platform.
All right, thanks so much, everyone. I'm Greg Gallant, the CEO and co-founder of Muck Rack and the Shorty Awards. I'll just quickly tell you our story and then dive into how the whole platform works. So I originally got into social media. I started a podcast way too early in 2005. It was an interview series with entrepreneurs where I'd interviewed anyone from Reid Hoffman back when LinkedIn was still 30 people to the founders of Yelp, Brooklyn Brewery, Vanguard Group. One of the guys I had on was Ev Williams, who started this company called Odeo that was supposed to revolutionize the media world. They launched Odeo, didn't go so well, but they had a little side project idea called Twitter. This is what it originally looked like back before they could afford the vowels. It's originally twttr.com until they scraped together 10 grand to buy Twitter from a bird enthusiast. So I signed up really early. That's how I got my first name on there. I just typed in Gregory. Nobody grabbed it yet. So I'm now at Gregory on Twitter and get a lot of mistaken tweets ever since. And that led us to create the Shorty Awards. From being in social early, we had this idea that we should figure out who's the best on social media, tweeting about any topics. So we launched an award show and viral. Within 24 hours of launching it, became the top trending term on Twitter. And we quickly got a ton of press. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, BBC, all covered it, contacted us about covering it within 24 hours. And I've launched a bunch of stuff before, and I know it's usually really hard to get PR for something new. So we're wondering what's happened here, what's changed. And we saw social media was changing how journalists worked, how they found stories, how stories were distributed, how the news cycle works, how you have to report on news. And that inspired us to launch Muck Rack, which now, as you heard, many companies are using. And we actually did a quick look up on the speakers and saw the majority of the speakers here today are now using Muck Rack. So when you corner them, always feel free to ask them how they're using it. But with that, let me just pull up Muck Rack here so I can show you how it works. Great, so the fundamental idea behind Muck Rack is that the kind of old way of searching for journalists, using a directory, just seeing, hey, show me every journalist who, whoever, every journalist that covers food because I want to pitch Baked by Melissa, isn't the right way to go about doing it. So similar to our friends at Meltwater who started off, I had cupcakes on my mind. So figured we'd do a search for Baked by Melissa. And now what this is doing is it's searching through every journalist that's ever written about or tweeted about Baked by Melissa. We could also search for their CEO's name, etc. And then rather than just saying, hey, I'm going to pitch every journalist that covers the food beat, I can say, let me pitch these journalists that are actually tweeting about Baked by Melissa. I might also do a search for Georgetown cupcakes or various other vices to kind of get this list together. Another cool way to use Muck Rack is that you can search and see which journalists have put cupcake in their bio. So here I did a quick search, and this is a amazing list, I think, where you can see the person said in their Twitter bio, journalists obsessed with travel, cupcakes, and Harry Potter. So this person would be perfect to pitch on it. Again, going on and on. Chronicle Herald, cupcake enthusiasts. So you figure out right away who's the right journalist to pitch. Another great example of using this, I saw was a company that sold boxed wine. So they figured they couldn't pitch any wine journalist because a wine journalist would not write about boxed wine. But do a search for boxed wine in Muck Rack, you see the journalists who love to drink it but aren't really wine journalists, but would sure write about it if you sent them a box of wine. And they did that to get a lot of traffic. From here, it's super easy. I can just say I want to add all these people to a media list. Could call it Melissa. Then from there, everybody gets on my media list. I get all their emails, contact info, all their social handles. And now from here, we really put a lot of thought into this because on one hand, you have to pitch them all and it's a lot of work. But on the other hand, we know that the industry, I think, has really been hurt because a lot of people just send out mass pitches without any customization. And of course, when you do that, surveys and data we have overwhelmingly shows the journalists resent it and increasingly ignore it. So we wanted to find an easy way where you could customize your emails but not have it take away all your time. So we built this new pitching tool where you can easily decide you want to send a pitch to this group, so we can make a new pitch. And now here it lets me set up my pitch, and I can go ahead to the next step here. So you can see here are the journalists we just added to the media list. We have their emails. We can start setting it up, confirm that it's them, add more people if we want. We could even import lists we have from elsewhere if we already have them in Excel or somewhere else. And this is a really cool part where it starts with a mail merge, as you've probably seen elsewhere, hi first name, and then I could say, write about my cupcakes. Good thing I'm not NPR. All right, let me do a subject. But now the really cool part is that I've got my mail merge set up to all these people, but instead of just sending the same thing to everybody, I can go through and customize each instance of the email. So of course I would fix my typos before sending this out, but now I know this is the one I'm customizing just to Megan. So I can say, hi Megan, and then let's say I just met her at PRSA. I can say nice to. So now I have a customized email, and then I can close this one again. So now I know that I've customized my first email, and super easily I can just go through this workflow and customize every email I'm going to send. And it kind of replaces that very painful process we have to go through now if we want to be good and send customized pitches by copying and pasting a bunch of stuff together. From there, it lets me review everything before I send this pitch, and it'll remind me that maybe I haven't customized enough pitches, maybe this pitch is a bit too short, so it kind of pushes everyone to write great pitches, and it's a great way to get around if you hire new staff who maybe hasn't been trained as much on how to pitch. This way it's kind of built into Muck Rack, kind of forcing everybody to pitch the right way, to customize the pitch. And then I can send the pitch, but I'm not going to because I had a lot of typos, and I should probably work on this a bit more, maybe hire one of you to do it for me. So from there, Muck Rack does a lot more. It has alerts. You can see all my very vain Muck Rack alerts that I've set up. So anytime I'm mentioned in the news or any of my companies are, I get an email immediately. And that's even if the journalist writes a story about us or even tweets it. And that's super valuable because we'll see a lot, especially with the Shorty Awards, a day or two beforehand, a lot of journalists will tweet about the Shorty Awards. So we'll get that email, and within minutes, we can reach out to that journalist, email them, and say, hey, do you want to come cover the Shorties? Let me just show you some of the reporting tools also. So this is our coverage reports. We threw together a few for Melissa also, where it figures out all the coverage it got, all the social share data, lets you really dig into it. Another really cool feature we have is when you're on any URL on the web, so like let's say here's a article in Entrepreneur about Melissa, But let's say even you didn't find it through Muck Rack. Maybe a colleague sent it to you, you saw it on Twitter, it came in a daily news roundup. You get this little button here on your browser bar. It's a little hard to see from here, but it just says open in Muck Rack. And all I do is I click that button, and it brings this whole article into Muck Rack and lets me analyze every aspect about it so that I can see who wrote the article and add them to my list. I can get all the data on social shares, journalist reach, the UVM that we get through our partnership with ComScore, on how many people view that outlet, and then even which other journalists have tweeted about this article, which is another very powerful insight, because you could look at the other journalists that tweeted this article and then pitch them on follow-up stories. Muck Rack has a lot more functionality. I don't have time to go through all of it right now, but if you want, we have our team back there and a bunch of other folks from our team. They can set you up with a free media list, run through a search like I just did for your brand, and almost more importantly, I have another product that I need to demo now. It's how many people have a pop socket? Nice. So we have Muck Rack pop sockets. They're this very cool thing. They stick to your phone, completely removable, and you just pull them out, and now you're all set to do your selfies, get the rest of the social media you need, and it's also cool if you're stuck on a plane and you want to watch a video. It lets you, well, let me show it here. Thanks, everyone.
Without further ado, really excited to welcome up our third technology showcase, Roger from Cooperatize. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Natan. So I guess I'm the only thing that stands between you guys and lunch, so I'm going to make it fairly quick and concise on what we do. But today we heard about journalists, we heard about celebrities, we heard a little bit about influencers, but what Cooperatize does is we different brands with micro-influencers. So you might be asking what a micro-influencer is, but has anybody been on Facebook today or Twitter? Anybody? Anybody? I know this side of the room seems to have heavy hands today. But chances are you're probably following a micro-influencer. And what we do is we connect you with these micro-influencers so that they can create content on your behalf. So a lot of times people ask, well, what does this content look like? And honestly, it's really, here's a blog post, and that's your story. It's pretty straightforward. Your story could be here. So what do we do as a software platform? Well, we kind of do a couple different things. I've created an acronym called ICAR, like iPhone, which you can remember. So the I stands for identify. We have over 50,000 micro-influencers on our platform, and the interesting thing is that they all have these really super niche verticals that they write about. Everything from, maybe there's vegan cupcakes to, dog-friendly restaurants, not New York City, to anything else that you can think of, and you can really pinpoint all of the interesting things that these people write about, and they have a really rabid following about it. Something that's really interesting in terms of what we do is we look at audiences. Just because somebody writes about a certain thing or they're from a certain place doesn't necessarily mean that that's their audience. And I think the best example I can give you is my good friend Justin Bieber, who, if you were trying to sell shaving cream through Justin Bieber, you might be a little bit disappointed because his following probably does not use shaving cream and is most likely teenage girls. So I help you identify the micro-influencers that you want to use. The next step in the entire process is we help you try to create the best content that you can. We use IBM Watson to help you read all of the content, and we identify sentiment, we identify grade level. We basically try to make this piece of content as best as it can to get out there to that audience that you're trying to reach. Then we do something that's a little bit unique in the content world. We actually put our pixel, our code, on every single story that goes out. And what that allows us to do is see what stories are people really reading. You know, there's one thing to click on a story, but there's another thing to actually read the story. Are all the readers coming from Russia, or are they really coming from the places that you're targeting? How long are people sticking around? When are they reading the stories? Where are they reading the stories from? And so on and so forth. So we really give you a lot of data in terms of how people are engaging with your stories. Now, it wouldn't be micro-influencers without our micro-influencers pushing this content. So we actually gamify our platform so that all of the micro-influencers have different goals that they need to reach, that they want to reach, to make sure that your content is seen by as many people. And they push this out via their social media channels, their email newsletters, whatever it takes to reach a particular goal. And the interesting thing about this, and I saw this chart in the Meltwater presentation, was when the social media push is finished, well, that's kind of where the search takes over. So all of these influencers are pushing this content via Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. And then finally, when that's about to die down, these stories are then found via Google search and Bing or whatever else you might be using. And that's really cool because it gives you this extended life to your story. Something that's probably taboo at this conference, but we do it anyway, is we mix in content with advertising. And something that I think a lot of you guys, have you guys heard of retargeting? I'm sure when you put something in your Amazon cart and then you get haunted forever by that pair of shoes, even though if you might have bought it already. So we do something similar where if we know that you read this piece of content about, in this example, North Dakota, we're going to have this ad come back and bring you back to that website time and time again. Some of the things that we've been experimenting with on the travel side is if you've done a search, let's say New York City to North Dakota, well, in the old days, we would retarget you to go back to like a kayak or something like that to book that flight. But there's a reason why you didn't book the flight. So we might retarget you back with a story, let's say 5 family-friendly things to do in North Dakota, so that you actually have a reason to book this trip. The final piece of the puzzle is content attribution. So in the digital world, everybody loves to know how many clicks they got, how many people visited our website, so on and so forth. And that's really challenging because content is one of those things that is really, quote unquote, top of funnel, right? You're sitting there waiting for the bus, you're wasting time on Facebook, you might learn about something, and then later on when you get home, you Google it, and the person with the marketing budget says, wow, Google brought me all these customers and content brought me nobody, right? So what we want to do is really figure out what is that value of content. And what we've started to do is purchase data from a lot of different places. So one of the places that we've started is in the travel industry. And what we find is that if the story is truly doing its job, you're going to ask the price. So what we do is we put our cookie on all of our stories, and later on, if you do a search, let's say, for North Dakota, we can now say that our story helped drive this search towards for the interest of North Dakota or hotel in North Dakota or anything like that. So that's Cooperatize in a nutshell. I hope you found it interesting. We have a table in the back. Come visit us, and hope you guys have a great lunch.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you all for sitting so